How fitting that the next time I return to Metroid on the channel, it's to tackle what was originally the next entry in the Metroid timeline, as well as the final point in said timeline. After the release of Super Metroid back in the 90s, it was expected that the next title would be on the N64, but Nintendo couldn't come up with any concrete ideas ultimately, and the next game wouldn't be released until the GameCube era. But around the same time as Metroid Prime's development, Nintendo's R&D1 division was given the chance to make a Metroid title for their upcoming handheld, the Game Boy Advance, with the game eventually being called Metroid Fusion. And going off this footage from E3 2001, apparently it was going to have Samus shoot out particle beams at the enemies. Really all it's missing is the ghost trap. I ain't afraid no, X. Released a day after Metroid Prime in 2002, Metroid Fusion received critical acclaim amongst the critics and still has a big following with its fanbase to this day, to the point where people wanted not only a remake of the title, but also a continuation after what happens at the end of the game, which I will touch on shortly. So do I agree with the critics on this one? Or is it a game that shouldn't have gotten a prequel on the Wii? Well, let's find out. So sometime after Super Metroid and Other M, Samus returns to planet SR-388, the home of the Metroids, and gets into a nasty encounter with a nasty parasite known as the X-Parasites, which are these things that can replicate its hosts and mimic them after killing said host, basically the equivalent of the thing from the John Carpenter movie. After being infected and nearly losing her life is saved thanks to the remains of the baby Metroid being used in a formula to kill the parasites in her body, and her power suit, which was pretty much infected by the X, is moved to a space station for examination, and Samus is tasked to go there to investigate after an explosion is reported. Yes, we've gone from a bounty hunter trying to save a baby Metroid in the last game, to basically being a detective. What a downgrade. So as the story goes on, we find out that the X have invaded the station, and the remains of Samus' power suit have formed a life of their own, known as the SAS, that can easily kill Samus at numerous points, because it has the Ice Beam, and now Samus has a weakness to that due to the Metroid vaccine, yet she can use Ice Missiles perfectly fine despite coming out of the same arm cannon as her Ice Beam. Okay. Also, since the most terrifying thing about the SAX was this jump scare in recent playthroughs, I'm calling it Sax instead. You can kill me for it later. And that's the basic story. I know there's also a betrayal plot in the Federation basically not sending Samus upgrades after a certain point because they didn't want her to get too powerful to stop the Sax, but then why send her there in the first place? They know she's gonna kill her. That'd be like if in Super Metroid they sent her to get the baby Metroid back and then revealed that they turned Zebes into a Metroid breeding center. It's stupid, and it doesn't make a lot of sense when I take more than 2 seconds to think about it. And as you can see from my footage, I didn't particularly care about this twist as well, so not only did I find it stupid, but I also didn't really care about it when it came to the main story. Even the reveal at the end with Adam basically being the AI is something I'm not a fan of. Throughout the game, Samus talks about her former commander, Adam Malkovich, in a lot of the cutscenes, and while I'm not a fan of the show-don't-tell form of storytelling, another M didn't help matters in hindsight, it did an effective job of showcasing Samus and Adam's military relationship and how much his death affected her. So I get why she called this AI Adam initially. It was similar to Adam, and she felt it could fill that void that was formed after his passing. And maybe this AI could fill that void and give her closure, even if it's not the same as the commander she cared about. But at the end of the game, it's revealed that, no, that AI is a recreated Adam Malkovich, so instead of allowing her to move on, things basically return to normal for her when it comes to that bond, as if she never truly lost him to begin with. And yeah, it is touching to see her reunite with her commander in a sense. I'm still not a fan of this twist, but that's just me. Personally, I would have preferred it be not a recreation of Adam and have her basically find closure with him by forming a bond with this new AI and forming a new bond with the commander in a military sense, but I also get why people like this reveal. I'm just not a fan of it because it feels like that void made by the loss of Adam is kind of negated by basically doing the equivalent of reviving him in AI form, instead of just letting her move on, filling that void left by that loss through other means, or eventually finding someone else like a lot of people do in real life when they lose someone close to them. But like I said earlier, I do get why people like this reveal. It gives Samus an opportunity to be reunited with her commander again in some sense, and after all the crap she went through in the game, at least she got something good out of it by the end. Now, normally I wouldn't get on Metroid for a subpar or mediocre story, since the main appeal of the franchise is exploring an unknown world and fighting alien creatures like the franchise it's inspired from, but since Metroid Fusion decided to put more focus on its story when compared to other titles before it, I have to talk about it, and honestly, it's just okay at best. It has the basic story structure of beginning, middle, and end. The pacing is okay, though some reveals like the Federation not wanting Samus to get too powerful and the reveal of Adam as the A are a little oddly placed in the story, and I feel like there was more that should have been there prior to make the reveal more effective, and the writing is mostly, decent. Though it does have really stupid moments like the aforementioned Federation reveal, as well as Adam chastising you for unlocking the level 4 doors without authorization. Even so, I do not approve of bypassing security level 4. From now on, you will use more discretion. Oh, I'm sorry, Adam. Did you see a means for me to get back to the navigation room without releasing the locks after beating this creepy-looking guy? There is logic in what you say. Also, I find it funny that they said they didn't want to send the diffusion missiles because they didn't want Samus to get too powerful. Oh, don't worry. You can keep those. Trust me. But yeah, the story is just okay at best and nothing for me to really write home about. But the graphics are at least good, and like Super Metroid, it has good coloring, sprite quality, and the backgrounds to make each area, despite backtracking to pretty much all of them multiple times, really atmospheric and executed pretty well, outside of, again, the numerous backtracking moments. Speaking of which, let's talk about what will be seen as a deal breaker by some people who enjoy the Metroid games, the linearity. In past games, there was a set path for you to go on, but it was mostly implied or subtle about it. In Super Metroid, however, rewarded you for going off the beaten path if you were good at the game by giving you items quicker than normal and ultimately a faster time. But in Metroid Fusion, you are directly told to go to this area with only a few opportunities to go off the beaten path, like first trying to unlock the doors and then going off to the area you were instructed. This is something I did not enjoy on my playthroughs of the game. Again, other games prior to this did have a set path, but it was more subtle and less in your face about it. And your enjoyment of this game will partially depend on whether or not you enjoy your Metroid games with linearity and little to no opportunity to go off the beaten path, or you prefer a more non-linear experience like in Super Metroid. If the former, you'll enjoy this game, and its pretty atmospheric scenery, though again, the numerous revisits to the area was a little ridiculous since I feel like they could have expanded on the areas instead of making them small and require multiple revisits to get the story required power-ups. But if not, you may find enjoyment in the game, or you may want to play something else with less linear gameplay in this series. And yes, I know it was done this way to make it potentially easier and or because it was on a handheld, but as I said before, just because there's a reason for something doesn't mean I have to like it here, and I don't. I'm more of a fan of the non-linear / in-your-face gameplay like in Super Metroid or even Metroid Prime to an extent. Speaking of power-ups though, the new ones are a mixed bag personally. The wide beam is basically the Spazer but can now be combined with the plasma beam, so literally just the Spazer beam if they actually bother to let you combine them. The ice missiles is just the ice beam with an ammo cap, though one thing I will admit I do like is that instead of making the missiles and super missiles separate like in the previous games, they are stacked on top of each other, and the same applies to the ice missiles, being just as strong as the super missiles and also allows you to freeze items. But the diffusion missiles are the most worthless items out there and inferior to the ice missiles subjectively speaking. It's only really useful for the 2 puzzles it's mandatory for, and every other time past that point, the charged wide plasma wave beam combo did much more damage than the diffusion missiles ever did. Oh look, I died to Ridley using the diffusion missiles. Lovely. Didn't want us to get too powerful, my ass. Look at how quickly I killed Ridley using the beam combo. That's simple. Legit. What was wrong with just the ice missiles, or better yet, why even invent the diffusion missiles if they're used so sparingly in the game for puzzles and the like in the main game? And especially when at that point in the game, the beams objectively do more damage, when in other games, it was the other way around. But on the bright side, thanks to the fusion suit, which is Samus' default suit after receiving the Metroid vaccine, you can absorb the X-Parasites into your body and gain health, ammo, or both, depending on the type of X-Parasite you absorb. The same also applies to weapons and power-ups seen in previous games that are housed in the Core X, or better or worse, but regardless, it's a change I do like since it means we aren't actively searching for separate ammo types when farming for energy. So yeah, on top of the missiles being stacked instead of being separate items, I do like the simplification of getting health and ammo in this by getting X-Parasites. Oh, and the recharge rooms are also more streamlined as well. Instead of going to 2 separate rooms in the game, it's combined into 1 room for missile and health refills, and it's greatly appreciated. A pity though that the wall jumping, which was a feature I liked in Super Metroid, is not as good this time around. You can only go in the opposite direction after doing it, and the physics basically prevent you from doing it again on the same wall, and I kinda get why since one of the power-ups is the ability to grab ledges, but I'm still not a fan of it, and even the ability to grab ledges is just okay at best personally. Even the screw attack feels kind of worthless as a power-up here. You get it after beating Ridley X, and it's only really useful for a couple sections, and that's it. Kind of feels like a last-minute addition, in all honesty. Speaking of bosses, though, they kind of suck in this. If they don't have uncreative designs like the Zazabi, Sarah security robot, and totally not a Chorizo statues, they go on for too long at points, or basically force you to wait, like Saris, the Ghetto Spider, and the second variant of the Core X, which you have to wait for them to open their circle mouth things, or the ones that are decent like Ridley X and the Sax suffer from having to fight the same freaking Korax again and again because their idea of making hard/interesting bosses was to cram this thing in every encounter and give them slightly more health to pad it out. Give me a freaking break. Actually, while on the topic, let me go over the Sax itself and partially the horror element of this game. Now, as I stated previously, I wasn't that scared by this game or the Sax, but I do appreciate the attempt nonetheless, and I appreciate the concept of the sax being basically you, and you the player as the weak prey. It's an interesting take on the premise established in past games with Samus's character, and it was genuinely interesting to see how it was executed in the game, specifically the chase scene in Sector 2, where you had no means to combat the sax properly outside of the ice missiles, and you had to run away from it for several screens, and you had to use your wits to survive. I still didn't find it scary, but it was an effective scene and concept nonetheless, and that is something I can give praise to this game for. The music, on the other hand, is something I am not a fan of, though. Admittedly, this is because of the hardware/sound chip, but I am not a fan of the compressed, staticky at points music in the game, and I usually mute the game during my playthroughs as a result. Yes, I am being nitpicky here, I know that, but it still bugs me when I listen to them both during the game and on its own. Are there some good tunes despite that? Yes. Saris and, the escape theme? But a lot of the themes only really work in the scenes it's used for, and not really memorable when listened to separately, which is something I usually do with soundtracks that I do like. I know some people like it, and more power to you if you do, but I'm not one of them, and if this game ever got remade, I'm hoping it'll be on hardware with better sound chips, less compressed than the GBA. I wish I could play some examples, but due to continuity that is near impossible, so the most I can do about this point is suggest to you to go and check out the songs online, or go play the game yourself. As for me, I'm likely not going to be playing this anytime soon. While I do appreciate the attempted atmosphere and the sax, as well as minor enhancements like the graphics and stacking the missiles, I am not a fan of the story, as well as the mission-based gameplay pretty much. The bosses are not as great as previous titles, or downright repetitive, and even the new power-ups are kind of lackluster. I get the intent of the developers was to make it easier for newer players and less cryptic, and in that aspect it does work. But as someone who enjoyed the past games for their exploration and more non-linear gameplay, this just wasn't my cup of tea. That's not to say this game is horrible though. Far from it. On its own it's a decent game with some elements to it that I'm not a fan of. But when compared to other Metroid titles I've played, it definitely ranks near the bottom for me. Just barely above Samus Returns and Other M. And, you know, the first two Metroid games, but that's beside the point. But that's just me. I know this game has its fans, and if you do like it, more power to you, as I stated before. As for me though, I'm probably going to go pick up Super Metroid next time I return to the series. So that concludes this review. Thank you all for watching, and take care.
Where is she? I know I saw that frog carry David to this place, so what gives?
There you are. I've been expecting you.
Spit out her location or I'll let you live. I've got to protect this world and she has the power to destroy it, but I can stop her. I've been trying to deal with her power.
Protecting the world? Who are you kidding at this point? You and your organization claim that you want to protect this world by murdering the defective ones who skip appointments or refuse treatment, but really, you're just killing people who have a chance to control their powers and removing their choice and free will in the matter. You're no different than a serial killer taking their victim's life because they had no chance to stop them, and that was especially shown with the murder of David and Vincent Grimm. They had nothing to do with your plan to kill Susan, nor were they defective, yet you snuffed them out regardless.
They chose to stand in my way and I dealt them a quick death. They don't deserve to exist in our world, the world we are trying to protect.
The world you are trying to protect is a world where they must obey your every command or else face death. That's not a world of peace. That's a world where everyone lives in fear. A world that treats defects as second-class citizens who are forced to lose their powers or be altered by people like you. That doesn't make you a hero. That makes you a man who wants things his way and will kill those who abuse his ideology and methods. Because guess what, Serif? Any one of us can destroy the world with our powers. But most of us were trained to control it and be good people, and the ones who want and try to destroy it were dealt with. And this is no different.
You couldn't be any more wrong. You were given life by Vincent when he was a Black Lantern to be a spy for David back then. You had no free will or say in the matter. You were effectively raised to do wrong, and yet David led you into his home despite the power to kill him or anyone else. You have no right to talk about freedom of choice when you never had one. You were a slave to Vincent and you were one to David. The only reason you are protecting Susan is because David told you to. Face the facts. You're a slave to us.
I protect them because they gave me something I wasn't given, not even during my birth. Compassion and kindness. They knew what I did, and still accepted me because they knew it wasn't my choice. They gave me a future. They gave me choice. They gave me freedom. And that is why I stand by their side to this day. They saved my life. They gave me that chance to make a difference. And if I could change and do good, so can Susan. You may paint her as a figure who must be killed, but she is just as human. All the defects are just as human as all of us. So you may strike me down. You may strike David down. You may even strike Susan down. But it won't change the fact that your idea of a peaceful world will never happen. Because not only will we not accept it, but humanity won't either. You saw that with the changes up here, and the rest of the world will rise up to it too eventually. Because all of us are human, and deserve a chance to make a difference no matter what!
And your chance has been wasted. And again, now to finally kill the rest of your family.
Oh, the lanterns were all gone. This shouldn't be. Wait, no, it can't be. When he was given life, Vincent must have transferred his own energy to him to give him life like David did. Which means he had a small fragment of Vincent's Black Lantern energy all this time, but it wasn't activated. So when they took it away, they didn't consider him because he didn't know. It just triggered its activation.